There was a strange silence after Mad Max Fury Road became a success. Not the silence of failure, not the silence of being forgotten. Something heavier than that. It was the silence that comes after surviving something enormous. For months they had lived in heat, dust, diesel smoke, and controlled chaos. The desert was more than a filming location. It was a force. It burned their skin, it drained their bodies, it tested their patience, and somehow it bound them together. Day after day, under a white and merciless sky, they moved through a world of fire and metal. At first, it was only a film. Then, little by little, it became something more, something they were living inside. And then one day, it was over. The cameras stopped, the war rigs were parked, the makeup came off, the dust was washed away, and the world moved on. The film came out and exploded into greatness. Critics praised it, audiences embraced it, awards followed, interviews followed, red carpets followed. Their names were celebrated everywhere, but success has a lonely echo. One night, after it was all over, the cast gathered on a rooftop above Los Angeles. Soft golden lights glowed over the party. The sky was clean, calm, far away from the desert. They looked beautiful now, elegant dresses, dark tailored suits, polished shoes. The kind of night that looks perfect in photographs. And yet, in the quiet spaces between conversations, they looked like people listening for something far away. Charlize Theron stood near the edge of the rooftop, holding a glass she had barely touched. Her hair had grown back. The war paint was gone. Furiosa was gone. Or maybe not completely. There was still something in her face that belonged to the road. Something weathered. Something that had not fully come back. She looked over the city lights and felt the strange sadness that sometimes follows triumph. Not because anything had failed, but because something that mattered deeply had ended. Nearby, Tom Hardy stood in half shadow, speaking very little. Even in a room full of celebration, he seemed like a man with one foot somewhere else. Somewhere hot, wind-blown, endless. Around them, the others laughed softly. Nicholas Hoult, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Zoë Kravitz, Riley Keough, Abbey Lee. They had all returned to their lives, and yet some part of them had remained out there, in the dust. That was the quiet truth no one ever really asked about. People asked about the stunts, the vehicles, the scale, the action, George Miller's vision. But very few asked what it felt like after. What it felt like when the impossible thing actually worked. When the whole world finally saw what they had survived together. Because after something like that, there is often a private sadness. Not because it failed, because it ended. At one point, someone called for a group photo. The cast came together instinctively, laughing, touching shoulders, stepping closer. For a moment, the years fell away. The glamour fell away. The distance between their separate lives fell away. They looked less like stars at a celebration and more like survivors of the same storm. Then the camera flashed, and in that brief white light, something became visible, a quiet ache, the kind shared only by people who once lived inside the same miracle. Because that was what Fury Road had become to them, a miracle, a brutal one, an exhausting one, but a miracle all the same. Later that night, the party grew quieter. The conversations softened. The city shimmered below them in silence. Someone mentioned Namibia. Someone laughed about the heat. Someone remembered the wind. Then they all grew quiet again. Not awkwardly, not sadly exactly, just quietly. Because they knew they would never have that exact time again. Not that version of themselves. Not that uncertainty. Not that madness. Not that closeness born from exhaustion, risk, and belief. The movie would live forever now. On screens, in history, in other people's memories. But their version of it, the living version, The one made of sunburned skin, tired eyes, and dusty laughter between takes was already becoming a ghost. That was the saddest part of success. The world gets the finished legend. You lose the unfinished life inside it. Near the end of the night, Charlize looked across the rooftop one last time, at George, at Tom, at the others, at the warm circles of light and conversation. And maybe she understood then that some films never really leave you. They stay in the body, in the memory, in the nervous system, like old scars, like old songs, like roads you only traveled once, but somehow keep traveling inside you forever. The desert was gone. The engines were quiet. But somewhere deep inside each of them, the dust was still drifting, and maybe it always would.